The night he came back, his hand was resting over mine on the table, his thumb tracing slow circles like he had any right to touch me, like we were something unfinished instead of something I'd buried years ago. "Isabela," he said softly, eyes searching my face. "I was wrong about everything. If you'd let me, I'd really like the chance to." I slid my hand out from under his and picked up my bag. "Daniel," I said, steady, almost gentle. "Anyone in the world but you." His mouth parted like he'd just been slapped. The bar noise around us faded. The low hum of conversation, the clink of glasses, the country song bleeding from the speakers, all of it blurring as I stood up. Once upon a time, that man had sat in my little San Antonio apartment, drinking my coffee and telling me I wasn't what he had in mind. Tonight, I got to walk away. Before we start, tell me, where are you listening from? Drop your city in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the day he first walked into my life and walked all over my self-worth on his way out. It started with a very expensive, very bad idea. When you grow up on the south side of San Antonio, elite matchmaking service is not something you imagine for yourself. Cleaning houses with my mom after school? Yes. Learning how to stretch a pot of beans across 3 days? Definitely. Watching rich people move furniture around and thinking, if you just shift that sofa 6 inches, this whole room would breathe. That was my childhood. But paying $3,000 to let strangers in a glass office pick men for me, that was new. I'm not saying you need it, my best friend Anna insisted, stabbing her straw through the plastic lid of her iced coffee. I'm saying you deserve it. We're almost 30, Isa. You own a business, you wear blazers. This is your villain era. Date like one. I'm 29, I corrected. And villains don't spend $3,000 to get rejected. They do the rejecting. Exactly, she said. So go get your fancy curated man and reject him if you want. We were in our usual cafe off Broadway, the one with mismatched wooden chairs and a chalkboard menu that never got erased properly. The air smelled like espresso, cinnamon, and something sweet and buttery the baker in the back refused to name. I loved this place. The owner had let me design the gallery wall when they first opened. Local art, old family photos, a few of my own prints. I'd done it for almost nothing, more for the story than the money. In return, they gave me coffee and a table I could claim between client meetings. It felt like a little pocket of home that I'd made with my own hands. I flipped the glossy brochure Anna slid toward me. Elite Match Essay. Discreet introductions for discerning professionals. The photos looked like stock images of lives I didn't have. Couples laughing over wine on the Riverwalk. A man in a tailored suit holding a woman's hand as they walked through the Pearl. Someone in a dress that definitely never saw the clearance rack. This feels like cheating, I muttered. It is cheating, Anna said. Cheating the system. You spent your 20s grinding. Let someone else do the vetting for once. I watched a couple near the window share a pastry, shoulders leaning toward each other in that soft, unconscious way people have when they're used to choosing each other. Or I could just not, I said. I'm fine. Fine is what you say about gas station coffee, she said. You are not gas station coffee. My mouth twitched. You sure? I feel like a burnt medium roast half the time. Please, she said. You're like one of those fancy single-origin pour-overs that takes 5 minutes and 3 tools, and just don't know how to order you. I laughed, shaking my head. That is the worst metaphor I've ever heard. Okay, chai then, she corrected. You're like that chai that comes in a ceramic mug with foam and a little cinnamon art on top, and people are jealous they didn't order it too. You're unwell, I said, but my chest warmed in spite of myself. Her face softened. I'm serious, Isa. You've been building your life, your business, your whole world. You never really let yourself want someone who could actually meet you there. I thought of my last serious almost relationship, a guy who talked big about partnering up, but flinched every time I mentioned my business accounts like women and numbers shouldn't mix. What if it doesn't work? I said quietly. What if I pay all this money and they tell me I'm not what anyone has in mind? She leaned forward, eyes warm. Then we riot. I snorted. She squeezed my hand. And stay with me here. You find out that men who match your real standards exist. And if this service can't deliver, we'll know it's their failure, not yours. I looked back down at the brochure. Sleek paper, expensive ink. A space where the client's reflection hovered faintly over photoshopped smiles. I don't know, I said. It feels bougie. So become bougie, she said. You're an interior decorator with a wait list. You literally charge people to choose throw pillows. You're allowed to spend money on your heart. Rude, I said. It's more than pillows. She grinned. You know what I mean. Just do the consultation. That's all I'm asking. I traced the embossed logo with my thumb. The old fear stirred in my chest, the one that whispered, what if they look at you and decide you don't belong here? Fine, I said. One consultation. If I hate it, you never say villain era again. She gasped. Deal. But you're not going to hate it. I was wrong about a lot of things, but I was not wrong about this. I should have hated it from the start. Elite Match SA's office was in a building I usually only entered to pick paint colors for people with more money than wall space. The lobby was all polished white stone, brushed metal, and a massive abstract painting that looked like someone had dragged a squeegee through blue paint and called it Untitled No. 7. The air smelled faintly like expensive perfume and lemon. I smoothed my blouse and gave my name at the front desk. Ms. Cruz, the receptionist said with a professional smile. They'll be right with you. Would you like water? Coffee? Tea? I almost laughed at the idea of being offered free coffee by people I was paying $3,000. Instead, I accepted the chilled water in a glass bottle with the company logo and sat on a low gray sofa that probably cost more than my entire living room. A woman in a navy sheath dress appeared a few minutes later, heels silent on the polished floor. Isabela, she said. Hi, I'm Claire. Come on back. Her office looked like a spread from a magazine. Crisp white walls, sleek desk, and a window framing the Tower of the Americas, like it was a piece of art instead of the backdrop to my entire childhood. I perched on the edge of a leather chair that whispered, You don't usually sit in seats like this. So, she said, folding her hands. Tell me about you. I took a breath. I'm an interior decorator, I said. Cruz Interiors. I mostly do residential and short-term rentals. I've been on my own for 3 years. She smiled. Self-employed. That's wonderful. And what are you looking for, relationship-wise? That question always felt like an exam. Say too much, you sound needy. Say too little, you sound like you don't know yourself. I want someone stable, I said slowly. Someone kind. Someone who doesn't get intimidated by the fact that I work for myself, and I actually like what I do. She nodded, typing notes. And what are your non-negotiables? Lying, I said immediately. Controlling behavior. Anyone who thinks they're doing me a favor by being with me. Her eyes flicked up, sharp. You've experienced that before, once or twice, I said lightly. Any preferences? She asked. Age, background, profession? I hesitated. I don't care how much money he makes, I said. As long as he respects how hard I've worked for mine, I don't need to be taken care of. I need a partner. She smiled. You'd be surprised how many people don't know how to say that out loud. I only learned recently, I admitted. Therapy isn't cheap either. She laughed softly and asked more questions about my family, my faith, how I handle conflict, whether I want kids. When she asked about my upbringing, I told her the basics. Mom cleaning houses, dad leaving when I was 8, the South Side streets that raised me, the way I'd sit in other people's dining rooms while my mom scrubbed their baseboards and mentally rearranged their furniture. You learn to see potential early, she said. I learned to see what could be. I corrected, even when I was stuck with what was. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. We'll run your profile, she said finally. We'll look for matches who align with your values and your lifestyle. This isn't a quick process, but when we present someone, it means they've been vetted. Does that sound good? It sounded terrifying and hopeful, and like I was signing up to be judged in a way Tinder never prepared me for. Yes, I said. It does. When I left the building, the February air felt too bright. I stood on the sidewalk for a second, watching cars slide past, feeling strangely exposed. It's just a service, I told myself. You paid for it. You're allowed to want more. Still, the old voice in my head whispered, what if more doesn't want you back? The call came 3 weeks later, while I was crouched on a client's floor in Alamo Heights, taping off baseboards. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. Hi, Isabela, Claire's smooth voice came through my earbuds. We have a match for you. I sat back on my heels. Oh, okay. His name is Daniel, she said. Early 30s, financial advisor. No kids. Never married. Stable, driven, very family-oriented. He grew up in Dallas, has been in San Antonio for 6 years. You both listed long-term partnership and emotional maturity as priorities. Emotional maturity. Cute. She gave me the details. He'd seen my profile, agreed it was a match, and was open to meeting. They suggested coffee, somewhere familiar to me where I'd feel comfortable. My place? I blurted, then immediately doubted it. Is that weird? Not at all, she said. Plenty of clients start with a low-key at-home coffee. We'll run his ID, confirm everything, and send you his basic info beforehand. Low-key, I thought. Sure, just a stranger in my home. Okay, I said. Let's do it. We picked Sunday morning at 11, safe, bright, low pressure. I hung up, stared at the freshly painted wall, and tried not to imagine my entire life hanging in the balance of one curated conversation. That night, I lay awake, ceiling fan spinning shadows over my bedroom. What if he's amazing? What if he's awful? What if he's indifferent? In some ways, indifferent felt worse than awful. At least awful was something definite. Indifference was a shrug in human form. I spent Saturday turning my apartment into the best possible version of me. It was already my favorite place in the world. A small one-bedroom with creaky hardwood floors and a balcony barely big enough for 2 chairs, but it was mine. I'd convinced my landlord to let me repaint the nicotine yellow walls when I moved in. Now everything was soft eggshell with warm undertones, the kind of color that made people say, "It just feels cozy." Plants crowded the windowsills. Pothos, snake plants, a fiddle-leaf fig that was always one dramatic leaf drop away from death. My blue velvet sofa sat under a gallery wall of framed prints and photos. My parents before things fell apart. My mom in her cleaning uniform, laughing, me at 22 in front of the Alamo, holding up the key to my first solo apartment. This was the life I had built, square foot by square foot. No one gave it to me. No one could take it away. Still, I fluffed pillows with more enthusiasm than necessary. I rearranged coasters. I wiped invisible smudges off the coffee table. In the bathroom mirror, I judged myself like I was a client's space. Dark hair, long and usually wavy when I remembered to let it dry naturally. Brown eyes, the same shade as my mother's. Soft body. Strong hands. A face that was fine, sometimes pretty, depending on the lighting and my mood. From a design standpoint, it works, I told my reflection. You're functional and charming, with good bones and potential for appreciation. I rolled my eyes at myself. For the date, I chose dark jeans that actually fit, a cream-wrap blouse that made my skin look warm and intentional, and the gold hoop earrings my mom had given me when I registered my business. You're a businesswoman now, she'd said, pressing the little box into my hands. You need something that shines when you talk. I let my hair down, added a little soft wave, and did my makeup natural but present. When I texted Anna a selfie, her reply came fast. If he doesn't fall in love with you, I will. Again. Also, send his full name so I can cyberstalk in case you disappear. Romantic, I texted back. I contain multitudes, she wrote. In the kitchen, I set up my regular drip coffee maker and my French press. I ground beans fresh, the smell blooming through the apartment like a warm hug. Coffee, to me, always felt a little like design. The same elements arranged 100 different ways, small details changing the entire experience. By 10:55, everything was ready. Mug options lined up, sugar and honey in small bowls. Pan dolce, I'd picked up that morning sitting on a plate like a bribe. At 10:58, my heart started beating too fast. At 10:59, I almost texted Claire and said I was sick. At 11:01, there was a knock at my door. My hand shook as I reached for the handle. "Okay," I whispered. "Let's see what $3,000 looks like." I opened the door, and there he was. Daniel looked like someone's idea of a safe bet. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with dark hair neatly styled, a clean shave, and a pale blue button-down that fit just right across his shoulders. The sleeves were rolled to his forearms, exposing strong, tanned arms, and a watch that probably cost more than my first car. His eyes were hazel, lighter than I expected, with little lines at the corners when he smiled. He said my name, and it came out perfectly, all the vowels soft in the right places. "Yes," I said. "Hi." He held up a white paper bag in one hand. "Brought pan dulce from that place on Flores. Claire said you like cinnamon." "She remembers everything," I said. "Come in." He stepped inside and paused just past the threshold like he didn't want to track the outside world into my space. His gaze moved slowly over my living room, the plants, the art, the couch, the books. Not in a judging way at first, more like a designer admiring another designer's work. "This is beautiful," he said. "You did all this?" "Yes," I said. "Job hazard." "It looks like you," he said. I laughed softly. "What does that mean?" He glanced at me, then back at the room. "Warm, put together. Details that matter. Interesting, but not like you're trying too hard." That was a very good answer. "Coffee?" I asked. "I have drip, or French press if you want to pretend we're in a movie." He smiled. "Drip is great. Black is fine." We moved into my tiny kitchen. As I poured, he leaned in the doorway. "So," he said, "how has this whole matchmaking experiment been for you so far?" "This experiment?" I said. "You're my first test subject." He raised his brows. "No pressure." I passed him a mug. Our fingers brushed, a quick electric spark I pretended not to feel. "What made you sign up?" I asked, needing to shift the focus off me. He took a sip of coffee and nodded approvingly before answering. "Time, mostly. My job eats my week. The older I get, the less I feel like playing games. Dating apps felt like a game I didn't understand." "Same," I said. "I don't have 12 hours a week to debate whether hey is an acceptable first message." He smiled. "And what made you sign up?" "I got tired," I said. Honest before I could stop myself, of pretending I was fine being fine. Work is great. My life is good. But the last time I tried dating, it felt like I was auditioning to be good enough for someone else's version of success. I thought maybe if someone vetted the basics first, I wouldn't have to keep proving I belong at the table. He studied me with a look I couldn't quite read. "You do realize you are the table, right?" I snorted. "You must be fun at client meetings." "What, clients don't like metaphors?" he said. "I use them all the time. Investing is like repainting an ugly room. You have to see past the color and trust the process." He had a sense of humor, careful and dry. It relaxed me. We moved to the living room with our coffee and the pan dolce. He took the chair, I took the sofa. Conversation flowed easier than I expected. He told me about growing up in Oak Cliff, his dad driving a delivery truck, his mom cooking for a daycare during the day, and cleaning offices at night. How his scholarship to UT had felt like winning the lottery. "I walked into my first finance class in sneakers from Ross," he said. "Some of those guys were wearing watches that cost more than my mom's car. I went to design school with girls who changed apartments because the lighting didn't feel right," I said. "Meanwhile, my mom was just happy if our rent didn't go up." "We turned out okay," he said. "Speak for yourself," I joked. "I cried in the tile aisle at Home Depot last week." He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. He asked about my work and listened without looking at his phone once. When I talked about color theory, his eyes didn't glaze over. When I ranted about clients who wanted everything neutral but not too neutral, he grimaced in sympathy. The more we talked, the more I felt myself warming to him. He was polished, sure, but there were glimpses of something softer under the surface. A kid who'd grown up watching his parents count pennies. A man who had built a nice life and didn't want to lose it. At one point, he stood and wandered toward my gallery wall. He stopped in front of the photo of my mom and me at the Alamo, sweaty and grinning, her arm wrapped around my shoulders. "This is you?" he asked. "Yes," I said. She'd just gotten her citizenship. We decided to play tourists for a day. "You look happy," he said. I was. I paused. "I am, most days." He turned toward me, closer now. "I like that about you," he said. "What?" I asked, my voice softer without meaning to be. "You seem sure," he said, "of who you are, of what you want. It's rare. If only he knew how many nights I lay awake debating whether I was too much or not enough." But I didn't say that. Instead, I said, "Sometimes. Sometimes I'm just good at pretending. I can't tell," he said. "That's impressive." He moved a little closer to the wall, closer to me. We were only a few feet apart now. I could smell his cologne properly, clean, with something sharper underneath. My heartbeat kicked up a notch. "You've done really well for yourself," he said, gesturing at the room. "It shows." "Thank you," I said, acutely aware of the way his gaze kept drifting back to my face. "You too, I guess. I mean, the watch is very financially stable." He laughed, and some of the tension eased. Then he asked, almost casually, "Can I ask you something kind of personal?" "Depends," I replied. "If you ask how much I charge, I'm adding a difficult client fee." He smiled. "Nothing like that. Just how important is money to you in a relationship?" I blinked. "I grew up with none," I said slowly. "So I know what it feels like to be scared all the time. I don't want that again. I like knowing the lights will stay on." I glanced around my apartment. "But I don't need someone to rescue me. I already rescued myself. I just want someone who doesn't resent that." He nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense." He took another sip of coffee, then looked back at me. "In my world," he said, "optics matter a lot. Clients want to feel like they're trusting someone who has their life together. The right car, the right suit, the right partner." Something in me cooled. "What do you mean?" I asked lightly. "Like, accessory-level partner?" He grimaced. "Not exactly. Just someone who fits in certain rooms. Someone who looks like they've always been in those spaces." The unspoken part hung there. Someone who doesn't look like they fought their way in. I felt my shoulders tense. "Does Claire know that's on your list?" I asked. "That you're looking for someone who comes pre-approved for country club invitations?" He winced. "You make it sound worse than it is. I make it sound accurate," I said. He sighed, then glanced at his watch. And just like that, we shifted. "What time is it?" I asked. "Almost noon," he said. "I have a client call at 1. I should head out soon." A tiny sting hit the back of my throat. "On a Sunday?" I said. "Occupational hazard," he replied. "Markets don't sleep." I tried to swallow the disappointment. An hour wasn't nothing. He'd been kind. He'd brought pastries. He'd laughed at my jokes. It was fine. He set his mug down and walked toward the door. I followed, smoothing my blouse for the 10th time, contained and composed. At the entryway, he turned to me. We were close. Closer than we'd been all morning. The kind of distance where one step would put me against him, where one breath might bring his cologne into my lungs. He looked at me, really looked. For a moment, I saw it. The possibility I'd been secretly hoping for, that this would turn into one of those movie scenes, the ones I'd designed living rooms around. He'd lean in, brush a strand of hair behind my ear, say, "I'd really like to see you again," in a voice low enough to mean it. His hand lifted, just slightly, as if to touch my arm. My heart pounded. Instead, he let his hand drop. "Isabela," he said gently. "You're great." A knot formed in my chest. Compliments that start with "you're great" rarely end well. "But," he added, there it was. "I don't think you're exactly what I had in mind," he said, long term. For a second, I thought I misheard him. "I'm sorry?" I asked. He shifted, clearly uncomfortable but determined to push through it. "You're obviously very talented and sweet and grounded. I think I pictured someone a little different, lifestyle-wise." I stared at him. "Lifestyle-wise," I repeated. "You mean richer?" He winced. "Not just that, but partly that," I said. He hesitated. "When I walk into certain rooms, there are expectations. Clients look. They notice. It's not fair, but it's the reality. I need someone who can blend into that world effortlessly. Who matches. It was such a harmless word, but it felt like glass in my throat. I looked down at my bare feet on my own hardwood floor, my chipped pink mug on the console table, the gallery wall I'd hung by hand. "You're saying I don't match," I said. He opened his mouth, closed it, then said, "I'm saying you deserve someone who fits your world perfectly, and I need someone who fits mine. It's better to be honest before either of us gets attached, right? Honesty, efficiency, optics." In one breath, he reduced me to an aesthetic that didn't quite fit his brand. I swallowed hard. "It's not personal," he added. "You really are wonderful." I laughed once, just a short, sharp sound. "You're rejecting me in my own living room, Daniel. It feels pretty personal." He looked pained. "I'm not rejecting you. I'm acknowledging the mismatch. If we continue, one of us will end up resenting the other." "That part you might not be wrong about," I said. We stared at each other. I thought of every time I'd been told I was almost something. Almost tall enough. Almost thin enough. Almost polished enough. Almost the right fit. I thought of watching my mother clean houses with a bowed head, while women carried charcuterie boards past her like she was invisible. I thought of how hard I'd worked to build a life where I was no longer the one shrinking. "Thank you for your honesty," I said, because I refused to crumble in front of him. "I hope you find someone who matches your optics." He flinched at the word, but nodded. "Take care, Isabela," he said. "You too," I replied. He stepped into the hallway. I closed the door behind him carefully, like the hinges might register my shaking hands. The second the latch clicked, my knees gave out. I slid down the door until I was crouched on the floor, my back against the wood, my chest tight. The apartment looked exactly the same, but all I could see was the space where he had almost reached for me and chosen not to, the breath between "you're great" and "but." I pressed my forehead to my knees and let the tears come, quiet at first, then harder, from somewhere deeper than this one morning. He was just a man, one date. But he had walked into the most intimate thing I'd built, my life, distilled into 4 walls, and decided I didn't fit the picture in his head. He didn't yell. He didn't call me names. He just calmly confirmed my oldest fear. "You're fine. You're great even. You're just not what I had in mind." If you've ever been quietly rejected in a way that makes your whole history ache, you know what happens next. You replay every second, every look, every word. You wonder what you could have said differently. If you laughed too loudly, if your couch looked cheap, if you noticed the one plant in the corner that was dying and thought that meant something about you. Anna came over that afternoon like I knew she would. I didn't have to call. She'd been waiting for the debrief. I opened the door with puffy eyes. She took one look at my face, kicked off her shoes, and marched in with a grocery bag. "I brought ice cream and wine and a willingness to commit crimes," she said. "Tell me where to aim." I laughed weakly. We sat on the couch, our socks tucked under us, spoons digging into the same carton. "What exactly did he say?" she asked finally. "That I was great," I said. "Talented, sweet, grounded." "So far correct," she said. "And then," I continued, that I wasn't exactly what he had in mind. Long-term, lifestyle-wise. Her eyes narrowed. "What does that even mean?" she demanded. "You're not made of fresh granite and old money." "He wants someone who fits his world," I said. "Client dinners, charity galas, whatever. Someone who looks like she's always been part of that life. And since you grew up on the South Side with a mom who cleans houses, you don't count," she said flatly. "He didn't say it like that," I said. "But yeah, basically." She scooped another bite aggressively. "These men look like a warm gas station churro and still think they're above handmade bakery bread." I snorted. "Please don't drag churros into this." "Sorry," she said. "Churros deserve better." Tears pricked my eyes again. "What if he's right?" I whispered. "What if I don't fit there?" I walked into that office and felt like I was wearing a name tag that said "does not belong." Anna put the ice cream down and turned toward me fully. "Listen to me," she said. "You walked into that office as a woman who built a business from zero. You walked in as someone who can walk into a stranger's house and make it feel like home. You walked in as the girl who used to clean those houses and is now invited back to design them. If he can't see how powerful that is, that's his deficiency." "He made it sound like logistics," I said, "just not a fit." She rolled her eyes. "If you're picking a couch, not a fit is logistics. When it's a person, it's character. He wanted someone whose family photos came pre-framed in silver. You came with picture hooks and a drill." I laughed, then wiped my eyes. "I hate that it hurts this much," I said. "It was one date. It hurts because he poked an old bruise," she said. "The one that says you're still that kid wondering if you're too loud, too brown, too South Side, too you." I hated how right she was. The next few weeks were a blur of work and self-doubt. Every time I walked into my apartment, I saw it through his imagined eyes. Small, charming, not quite enough. I caught myself apologizing mid-sentence to clients, then forced myself to stop. I caught myself shrinking in rooms where I'd once felt comfortable. It was like his words had loosened a tile I thought was cemented in place. That's when I went back to therapy. I'd seen Dr. Ruiz during a tougher patch a few years earlier, and stopped when things got better. Now I messaged her and asked if she had room again. In her small, cozy office off McCullough, with its gray couch and soft lamp and shelves full of books about trauma and resilience, I told her everything. She listened quietly, chin resting in her hand. When he said, "You're not what I had in mind," she asked, "What did your body hear?" I stared at a spot on the rug. "Not enough," I said. "Not polished enough. Not rich enough. Not worthy." "Did he say any of those words?" she asked. "No," I said. "But he didn't have to." "What he said," she replied, "was actually, 'You don't fit the story I'm trying to tell about myself. That's very different from your worth.'" I fidgeted with a loose thread on the pillow. "It doesn't feel different." "I know," she said gently, "because your brain took his sentence and hooked it onto every time you've been made to feel less than. That's what brains do. They create patterns to keep us safe. The work now is to separate his preference from your value." "How?" I asked, frustration bubbling up. "Like, practically. How do I not feel this way?" "By building a life where his opinion becomes smaller and smaller," she said. "By proving to yourself, over and over, that you're more than what one man had in mind. It's not a magic trick. It's repetition." So I repeated boundaries with clients. When someone tried to haggle me down because their cousin could probably do it cheaper, I smiled and said, "Then you should hire your cousin." I repeated self-respect with money. I raised my rates. I stopped undercharging because I felt guilty that people hired a girl from the South Side to pick their light fixtures. I repeated kindness with myself. "Less, you idiot. More. That was a hard day. You did your best." My life didn't transform overnight. But slowly, piece by piece, I made changes. I started saying no more. I started saying yes to things that scared me in a good way. Bigger projects, more visible ones. I created a little morning ritual. Coffee in my chipped pink mug, journal open, sunlight on my plants. 10 minutes of writing about what I wanted my life to feel like, not just look like. Some mornings I made 2 cups of coffee out of habit. One for me, one for the imagined version of myself I'd been trying to impress the world with. The perfect client's partner, the match. Eventually, I learned to drink both cups myself and stopped leaving one out for a ghost. I dated too. Regular, non-vetted people. A teacher who loved his job and hated social media. A nurse who worked nights and fell asleep during our second date. A guy who sold cars and told me everything about interest rates except his own feelings. No one stuck. But for the first time, rejection didn't feel like proof that I wasn't enough. It just felt like information. Years passed. Cruz interiors grew. My wait list got longer. My mom took on fewer houses. On Saturdays, we wandered through home goods together, touching throw blankets and critiquing cheap lamps. "You did good, Fila," she'd say, squeezing my arm. "You gave us both a better life." Sometimes I still thought about him, not in a longing way. More like you think about a car accident years later when you pass the same intersection. A flash, a phantom ache, and then it fades. By the time I was 32, I had almost convinced myself he was just a weird dream I'd designed too vividly, until the afternoon on the Riverwalk when I heard my name. It was late spring, the kind of San Antonio day where the sun felt like a warm hand on the back of your neck, but the breeze still tried to pretend it was doing something. I'd just finished a consult near La Villita and decided to treat myself to a slow walk along the water, an iced chai sweating in my hand. The Riverwalk was crowded. Tourists in floppy hats, families corralling kids, a couple taking engagement photos under one of the stone arches. I paused on a little bridge, watching a boat filled with people glide by when I heard it. A voice called my name. I turned. At first, my brain refused to match the voice to the face. Daniel stood halfway down the steps that led from the street to the water, portfolio under one arm, tie loosened, sleeves rolled to his forearms, looking just slightly rumpled in a way he never had before. For a fraction of a second, my body reacted before my mind did. A jolt in my chest, like catching a whiff of a familiar cologne. Then memory caught up. "Daniel," I said, my voice somehow steady. "Wow, hey." He came down the rest of the steps, a small nervous smile on his face. "I thought that was you," he said. "The hair, the way you walk." "I still walk," I said. "Haven't upgraded that yet." He huffed out a laugh, shoulders loosening a fraction. "How are you?" he asked. "Good," I said. "Busy." "You?" "Same," he said. "Work, clients, the usual." He looked me over once, quickly, respectfully, but I saw it, the little flicker of surprise. I looked different now. Not because I was suddenly in designer clothes or dripping labels, but because I stood differently. Less apologies, more spine. "What brings you down here?" I asked. "A client canceled last minute," he said. I figured I'd walk, clear my head. It's hard to be stressed by market volatility when people are eating nachos in front of you on a boat. I smiled despite myself. Accurate. We stood there, tourists flowing around us like water. "I've thought about you," he said suddenly. I blinked. "Okay." He winced. "Sorry. That was abrupt." "A little," I said. "But go on." He shifted his portfolio under his arm, searching for words. "I've wanted to say this for a while," he said. "I just wasn't sure I'd ever see you again." "San Antonio is small," I said. "Eventually you run into all your ghosts." He smiled, but his eyes stayed serious. "Would you be willing to get coffee with me?" he asked. "Or dinner?" No expectations. I owe you an apology, a real one, not the half-assed one I gave in your doorway." My heart beat faster. Old me would have said no immediately, or yes immediately, for the wrong reasons. New me knew there was power in deciding on purpose. "Text me," I said. He blinked. "Text you?" "You can get my number from Claire," I said, "if she still has it." "She does," he said quietly. "Then we'll see," I said, "if my schedule matches your optics." He flinched just slightly, then gave a small nod. "Fair." We parted with polite goodbyes. 2 days later, My phone lit up. Unknown number. The message read, "Hi, it's Daniel, from years ago. Thank you again for talking to me the other day. If you're still open to it, can I take you to dinner Friday? Somewhere neutral, somewhere public. No pressure, just conversation." My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Have you ever had someone hurt you so deeply that even their apology feels dangerous? Would you say yes, just to hear what they have to say? Or would you ignore the message and move on? I stared at his text for a long time before replying. I typed, "Rosario's on Friday, 7 p.m. He responded, "Perfect. Thank you, really." I put my phone down and exhaled. This wasn't a date. I told myself that 3 times. This was a consultation, but this time I was the one interviewing. Friday night, the air outside Rosario's buzzed with heat and music. The neon sign glowed pink and red against the darkening blue sky. The smell of sizzling fajitas and lime drifted out every time the door opened. I caught my reflection in the window. I'd chosen a black wrap dress that hugged my curves without apologizing. The same gold hoops from years ago, strappy heels I could still move quickly in if I needed to. My hair fell in loose waves around my shoulders. I looked good, not trying too hard, not trying at all, really. Just me, turned up a little. For a second, my mind flashed back to that Sunday in my apartment. The way he'd stood at my door. The way I'd felt small without him ever raising his voice. "Not this time," I murmured to my reflection. "You're the one walking in." Inside, the hostess smiled. "Table for 2, Cruz?" "Yes," I said. She led me through the crowd to a small table near the back. Daniel was already there, standing when he saw me. For a moment, all I registered were impressions. He'd aged, not badly, just honestly. Slight lines at the corners of his eyes, a little silver at his temples. The tie loosened at his neck made him look less rigid, more human. He looked me over, but not in the old assessing way, more like someone looking at a painting they weren't sure they deserved to see up close. "Hi," he said. "You look incredible." "Thanks," I said, sitting down. "You look like you still read investment reports for fun." He laughed, tension breaking. Guilty. The server came, and we ordered. Margarita for me, Topo Chico with lime for him, chips and salsa for the table. When she left, he took a breath. "I'm not going to waste your time," he said. "I asked you here because I owe you an apology. A real one." I leaned back. "Okay." He met my eyes. "I was an ass. Accurate," I said. He winced, but didn't look away. "In your apartment," he continued, "I treated you like a line item. Like I was comparing options on a spreadsheet, not sitting across from a person. I told myself I was being efficient, honest, but really I was being a coward. I stayed quiet. I was obsessed with optics back then," he said, "not just at work, in my whole life. I wanted to look like I belonged in every room I walked into. I was so terrified of being that broke kid again that I chose partners based on how they'd look standing next to me, not how they made me feel." He shifted, hands wrapped around his water glass. "You reminded me too much of myself," he said. "Of where I came from, of what I'd been trying to outrun. That little apartment, your mom, the stories about cleaning houses. I saw all of that. And instead of seeing strength, I saw a threat to the curated life I was trying to present." I let that sit for a second. "So you punished me for your own shame," I said. "Yes," he said quietly. "I did." The honesty was disarming. "What changed?" I asked. He huffed out a laugh with no humor in it. "I burned myself out," he said, chasing an image. "I dated women who looked right on paper. Ivy League degrees, perfect blowouts. They fit at the tables I wanted to be invited to." He shrugged. "Most of them didn't really see me. That was the point. They saw the version of me I was performing. And that was enough?" I asked. "It was safe," he said, "until it wasn't." He told me about a woman he'd dated seriously, beautiful, sharp, perfectly polished, how they'd gotten engaged too quickly, how the relationship cracked the second his portfolio took a hit, and she realized he wasn't made of endless money and certainty. She said she didn't sign up for volatility, he said, voice tight. She meant my income, but it felt like she meant me. And you realized, I prompted, that I was doing the same thing. Just from the other side, he said, choosing people for what they signaled, not who they were, using them as collateral in some emotional loan I was taking out against my own insecurity. He took a breath. I started therapy, he said. Real therapy, with someone who didn't let me talk in bullet points. I unpacked a lot. My dad's stress, my mom's fear. The way I internalized that money was the only thing standing between me and disaster, he swallowed. And the way I used people as proof that I'd escaped. My throat felt tight, but I kept my voice even. And where do I fit in that? I asked. He looked down at his hands, then back up. You were the first woman I walked away from for reasons that had nothing to do with you, he said. But I told myself they did. That you weren't a fit. That you weren't what I had in mind. The truth is, you were exactly what I needed. Heat flushed my chest. Anger, hurt, a bitter kind of vindication. You're a few years late realizing that, I said. I know, he said. And I'm not saying it to get a gold star. I kept thinking about you. About that apartment, about how comfortable you were in your own space, even with me there. How much you loved what you did, how you lit up talking about paint colors like they were people you cared about. You got all that in 1 hour? I asked. You made an impression, he said simply. Our food arrived then, fajitas still sizzling, tortillas wrapped in a warm towel. We busied ourselves with plates and toppings for a moment, grateful for the distraction. When we'd settled, he spoke again. I didn't ask you here to make excuses, he said. There aren't any. I asked you here because I wanted to say, to your face, that I was wrong. You weren't not enough. You just weren't willing to shrink to fit the story I was selling. And that scares the hell out of men like I used to be. I looked at him for a long moment. He looked different than the man who'd stood in my doorway 3 years ago. Softer around the edges, less sure of his own perfection. And beneath the guilt, under the carefully chosen words, I could see it. Desire, not just for absolution, but for something else. For me. Why now? I asked. Why not send an email, apologize, and go back to your curated life? He gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. Because when I saw you on the river walk, he said, you didn't look like someone still carrying that day. You looked like someone who got free. And I realized, I wanted to be the man who could fit into your life, not drag you into mine. My heart thudded slower, heavier. And? I asked. And, he said, voice soft but steady. I'd like a chance, a real one, to know you now. To sit on your couch again and talk about backsplash tile like it's philosophy. To drink your coffee and not treat you like a product. There it was, the ask. He reached across the table, slow enough for me to pull back, and laid his hand lightly over mine. His palm was warm. His thumb brushed the back of my hand in a slow, almost unconscious stroke. The contact sent a rush of old, complicated electricity through me. I'd be lying if I said I felt nothing. For a second, the restaurant noise faded, the clatter of plates, the laughter, the music, everything blurred. I saw it, the version of this scene in another story. In that version, I let my fingers turn, interlace with his. We pay the bill. We walk into the warm San Antonio night. He kisses me against my car, more careful this time than he ever would have been years ago. His hand finds my waist, pulls me closer, the city lights painting gold across his face. In that version, I let him press me lightly against my car door, his body caging mine without trapping me. His breath mixing with mine, his mouth warm and insistent against my lips. The years of regret and wanting, and almost all crashing together into one hot, dizzying kiss. My hands sliding up his chest, curling into his shirt, feeling the steady thud of his heart under my palms as he murmurs my name like a confession he's finally allowed to say out loud. It would be hot, emotional, a temptation I'd spent 3 years unknowingly preparing for. I felt the flicker of that possibility, of letting him be the man who finally kissed me the way I'd always wanted to be kissed in my own doorway. But this wasn't that story. I slid my hand out from under his fingers closed on air. His expression faltered. I said his name softly. "Yeah?" he asked, voice rougher now. "I appreciate your apology," I said. "I really do. I'm glad you did the work. I'm glad you're not still that man." His jaw clenched. But, I said, "I didn't do all this work on myself to end up with the person who once looked at me in my own home and decided I wasn't the right accessory." He flinched. "That's not how I see you now," he said. "I believe you," I replied. "But I remember how you saw me then. And more importantly, I remember how I saw myself after you left. I refuse to let that version of me make any more decisions, including this one." He swallowed hard. "Isabela, I don't need you to finish," I said gently. "You wanted closure. So do I. But closure isn't us together. It's me being able to sit across from you, listen to you say you were wrong, and still know that I don't want what you're offering." He looked like he'd been punched. "I'm not the prize here," he said quietly. "I know," I said. "I am." Silence settled between us. Outside, someone laughed too loudly. A glass broke at the bar. The server floated past with a tray of enchiladas, the smell of melted cheese and salsa filling the space between us. He took a breath. "So that's it?" "That's it," I said. "Not because you're a monster. You're not. You're just a man who was late to his own growth. And I have no interest in rewarding someone for finally seeing what was in front of them years ago." He nodded slowly, eyes shining more than before. "I respect that," he said hoarsely. "Good," I said, "because I respect me too." When the check came, he reached for it automatically. "I've got it," he said. "We split it," I replied, pulling my card from my purse. "Isabela," he protested. "At least let me." "We're closing a loop, not starting a tab," I said. "Half is fine." He let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "You really don't make anything easy, do you?" "That's the point," I said. We paid. We walked out together into the warm night. On the sidewalk, we lingered for a moment, the restaurant's neon sign casting red and pink light across the pavement. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said. He exhaled slowly. "I hope you already have." I thought of my apartment, the plants, the sunlight, the chipped pink mug. I thought of my mom texting me pictures of her feet up on her own couch, not someone else's floor. I thought of my client list, my booked-out calendar, the way I woke up most mornings grateful and tired and proud. "I do," I said. He smiled, sad and sincere. "Good night, Isabela." "Good night, Daniel." I turned and walked toward my car. I didn't look back. For the first time in my life, the most powerful moment wasn't someone choosing me. It was me choosing myself. So tell me, have you ever had someone come back into your life right after you finally stopped needing their approval? Would you have given Daniel another chance? Or walked away the way I did? And be honest, which feels more satisfying to you? The moment someone finally wants you, or the moment you realize you don't need their wanting at all? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. And if this one hit a little close to home, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next tale. Grab a cup, your daily dose of delight.